This is a refutation of Apostate Aladdin's critique of Jannah. Apostate Aladdin questions why does Jannah have so many levels if you can just simply have whatever you want? Because if you can have, for example, whatever you want, then I could simply want the highest level in Jannah, and then what's the point of even having levels? Everybody would just want the highest level, right? So there is something interesting about this question, which we'll get into, which is the exceptions that is in the Quran and Sunnah itself about what one can have in Jannah. There are some obvious ones, but let's just get straight to it. In Sahih Muslim 1887, it basically talks about the martyrs in paradise, and that when Allah asks them, would you want anything else? And Allah keeps asking them that question, they eventually answer, we would like to be resurrected in the dunya and then martyred again, killed again in your path, in jihad. And then Allah does not grant them that. That's very, very interesting point to ponder over. The martyrs are not some, you could say, at a low level in Jannah. They're actually quite on a high level. Yet despite how high their level is in Jannah, they are not granted this wish that they have. Why is that important? Because this contextualizes or clarifies that the statement of Allah, which Aladdin uses, is basically something along the lines of, you will have whatever your soul desire. But it's a absolute sounding statement that is clarified elsewhere. Now somebody might say, well then isn't the Quran contradicting itself? I'll get to that a bit later. I'll just add one more narration, which I think is interesting, which is about the regrets people will have in Jannah. So this is the reliability is debated, but I thought it was interesting. In Al-Mu'ajjam Al-Kabir Lil-Tabarani 182, graded by Suyuti as fair or Hasan, it says, the people of paradise will have no regrets except for moments that passed by them in which they did not remember Allah. Again, I think it's interesting because I don't think a lot of us maybe have heard these narrations or never thought about the implications or entailments of these narrations, that people in paradise can even have regrets and wants that go unfulfilled. I think that's quite intriguing and quite, I think, realistic, right? You would have things you'd regret, despite the fact you made it. Yeah, there's things you wish you would have done better. Makes sense. Fair enough. On top of that, right, it again is an additional point of, you could say, clarification about what you can want and be granted and what you could want and not be granted. Because obviously, amongst the, like, what does it imply if someone's regretful about something? Or what is implied by that? That they would want to have gone back to the past and fixed that wrong. Now, obviously, Allah is not going to grant that. No time travel here. So there's also other obvious hypothetical desires that Allah would not grant in Jannah that I think even Aladdin would agree that just by the theme of the Quran, it's just obvious Allah would not grant this. As examples, worshipping idols in Jannah. Obviously Allah would never grant this desire. Killing another person in Jannah, like another Jannati. Or taking their wives, hurs. Or stealing their belongings. Or destroying Jannah. Or becoming Allah. So obviously these types of desires Allah would never grant. I mean, they wouldn't even happen. But just hypothetically entertaining that possibility, that imaginary possibility, it wouldn't happen because they're unbefitting or evil. So why is this so important? Because it shows clearly that there are exceptions. That statement is a statement that's intended meaning is not to be taken unrestrictedly. Now, it's not even a metaphor. I think it's just kind of apparent that even in real life, just everyday speech, when we say these types of statements, we never ever intend by it unrestrictedly. In fact, the apparent or the first meanings that would come to mind would never be unrestrictedly. What do I mean by that? Let me go to some examples. So imagine, let's say Aladdin, right? Imagine, I'm sure Aladdin said this statement in his life, right? He said perhaps to his friend, let's do whatever you want today. I don't think Aladdin ever meant or intended by that statement actions such as murdering people, robbing people, destroying people. Like I don't think he means every single thing. Yeah, let's do whatever you want, unrestrictedly. Nobody ever in the English language would think Aladdin intends that. Everybody would agree that it's like a set of things that you could say are fine with, and we're just giving the choice to our friend that he can decide between them. When it comes to the statement of Allah, whatever your soul desire, it is referring to a set of choices that Allah is willing to grant, not those choices that are outside that boundary line, such as worshipping idols in Jannah, such as destroying Jannah, such as time traveling back to the past and not having sinned ever. Like, these things are not inside that zone of befitting or fine choices that Allah is willing to grant. Similarly, when Aladdin says stuff like, do whatever you want, or you can have anything you want, or let's do whatever you want, or let's eat as much as you want, or eat as much as you want, or take whatever you like, or do what makes you happy, or you can sleep in all day. Like, all these statements, there are absurd ways to understand these statements that everyone agrees we never understand them as. Do what makes you happy. Nobody takes that, including Aladdin, who's secular, clearly. Nobody takes that statement as, oh yeah, let's, I don't know, for example, kill some people I hate. Aladdin clearly is a secularist, right? His whole no harm principle, of course, it contradicts that, right? He doesn't even have to say a clarifying statement such as, obviously, like imagine somebody said this, do what makes you happy, but don't rape, and don't murder, and don't steal. No, we would find that odd. Obviously, we all know you can't do these things. It's so obvious in our everyday culture to not do these things. But, like, why is it that we feel as if somehow all-knowing Lord, Allah, like, there's not, like, he can't expect some common sense from us? You know, like, why can't he expect some common sense coming from us? Allah is saying, do whatever you have whatever your soul desires. Why isn't it rational for the Muslim believer to presume of Allah that Allah has a very, naturally high expectation of us, that we will take that as in a commonsensical way, that it's not unrestricted? Because obviously there are things which Allah will not grant. He will not let us worship idols in Jannah. He will not let us become Him in Jannah. He will not let us destroy Jannah. He will not let us desire to be at the highest level when we did not do deeds befitting of that. And to perpetually be at the highest level and to never ever ever come down. Like that. Like, there are just some, the very fact, let's just take, imagine how strange it would be. That Allah would say, you can have whatever your soul's desire, but you can't commit shirk in Jannah, but you can't murder other people in Jannah, but you can't desire the highest level in Jannah when you did deeds that befit a lesser level. Everybody would find, honestly, those clarifications as very odd, because they're so obvious that you don't even need a clarifying statement. So it's just, I don't even, look, what I've realized with apostates, there is no good in insulting them. There is no, it doesn't help. I want them to come back to the deen, and honestly, only a minority will ever come back to the religion, most likely. But I do think that when you take what I said, then this reading of the statement of Allah, that it's an unrestricted one, is an irrational reading. It's just wrong. It just doesn't make sense. Even if you think Islam is false, even if you think blah 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 this and that, just the intended author, you believe it's a human, you don't believe it's Allah. Do you really think the intent, whoever you think the author is, do you really think he would unrestrictedly intend that? Just think about the absurdities that come from that. Now, I understand why Aladdin doesn't realize the absurdity, because no one told him that, right? I don't think anybody just told him what strange absurdities would result as an entailment if we take his understanding seriously. That's why, we're human beings. We make mistakes. We sometimes don't realize the absurdities of our beliefs or our interpretation. That happens. So I get it. I've been there. We've all gone through that. But I'm just saying, really look at it just is obvious. Allah does not need to go out of His way to clarify, yeah, don't do this. We would, honestly, what's funny, or what's sad, or what's maybe contradictory, is If Allah made those clarifications, I bet some apostate would start critiquing Allah. Why are you making these clarifications? If He's God, why is He making these clarifications? Isn't it obvious that we would, just by the implication of what the Quran is saying over and over again, that obviously like a person who's befitting with the lowest level, if just by mere desire of the highest level can't go there, or obviously you just because you desire shirk doesn't mean Allah's gonna make it happen in Jannah. Isn't that obvious? Like, I'm certain some apostate would critique Allah for that, because that's how it kind of is, isn't it? I think we've dealt with, some of us have dealt with people in our life that no matter what you do, they were going to critique you. They were going to criticize you. Now, I'm not going to say Aladdin is that person. I don't know, but I just am certain, because of the the colorful, flavorful, and multi-diversity of apostates that there are. There would be someone out there who would critique Allah for His clarifications if He made those clarifications. Just like there is Aladdin here, who indirectly is falling into the camp of people who are critiquing Allah because He didn't make the clarification. To be fair, I wouldn't even put him in that category, because perhaps he doesn't. He's not even doing either. To be fair to him, but there are going to be people that, like, once I've made what I've said, right? If I hadn't given the example in which Aladdin himself, uses absolute sounding statements which he doesn't even need to clarify. If I didn't use that example, then what would have happened is that people wouldn't have realized the inconsistency of this critique towards Allah, that He can't use absolute sounding statements and then clarify Himself later. And then they would have critiqued Allah, why didn't He clarify it then? So, it's just this kind of, I don't know what to label this as, but it's just kind of strange. That's what I'm going to say. So yeah, I think that's enough of a refutation.